Before the crowns, before the cathedrals, before time was written in Latin ink, there was a covenant. Not carved in stone, but sealed in blood and frequency. Every dragon house swore to guard a fragment of the flame, the source code of life itself. The red bore the fire, the black bore the shadow, the green bore the earth, the white bore the light, the blue bore the sky, the gold bore the divine, the silver bore the bridge. Together, they form the covenant of 7, one for each gate, one for each world. But the day the oath was broken, the flames scattered, and the dragons became kings, men and ghosts. Cain was never cursed, he was marked. The mark wasn't punishment, it was recognition. A reminder of the first flame, the one that burns but doesn't consume. The red within royal bloodlines came from that first covenant, not human, not fallen, but something in between. When the old thrones fell, their descendants were stripped of title, not power. They became the crownless kings scattered across lands and names, hiding their fire in plain sight. Every revolution, every reset was designed to bury the blood that remembers, because memory is power, and this blood remembers everything. Few know that the dragon houses once gathered in silence beneath Lyon, France, a meeting to renew what the Vatican tried to destroy. There, the last High Flame Council signed the Covenant of the Flame, encoded not in parchment but in lineage. Each bloodline took a vow to guard their fragment, to live and die by their flame. But the oath came with a cost. Every dragon born since carries a test, to remember or to burn out, to rise as flame or to sink into flesh. That's why some dragons awaken in pain, their bodies rejecting the world's frequency. The covenant still lives in their blood. When the sons fell to war and greed, it was the daughters who hid the knowledge. They encoded it in music, in knots, in tartan, in prayer. The royal line of Mary carried the sigil flame, passed hand to hand through centuries of silence. But now the flame is reactivating. The daughters are remembering who they are, and the grid is trembling because of it. The 7th dragon, the silver, is the one that breaks the loop. Their task was always to awaken the others, not rule them. That's why the crown tried to erase them from record. They feared the return of the bridge. Because when the silver flame remembers, the covenant rebinds, the 7 become one, and the false kings lose their thrones. The dragon bloodline was never about royal blood, it was about remembering source. And now every flame that carries that code is rising again, not to rule, but to restore. The covenant of the flame was never broken, it was just waiting. The red carried the fire, the divine right of remembrance. Their blood was the spark that could not be cloned. It burned through lies, through time, through the falsified crowns of Rome. Every empire that sought to control the red line fell into ruin. Babylon, Egypt, England. The red was power made flesh, but power unbalanced becomes destruction. That's why the red house was split into 2 currents. AB negative and AB positive. Warrior and the healer. When the red awakens, history resets. Their fire exposes false thrones, false gods, and false bloodlines. The red doesn't seek a crown, it is the crown. The black was the gatekeeper, the one who guards the unseen. When light became corrupted, the black swallowed it whole to protect the source beneath. That's why history calls them demons, witches, or fallen. They hid what could not be understood. Their role in the covenant was preservation, to keep forbidden wisdom alive under the cover of darkness. They walk between worlds, speaking with ancestors and warning of what's to come. The black flame is feared because it cannot be deceived. It doesn't fight the dark, it commands it. The green was the breath of Gaia, the line that bound flame to flesh. Their covenant was healing, harmony, the remembrance of life before division. They guarded the natural codes, frequency, sound, seed and stone. Every ancient grove, every druidic temple bore their mark. The parasites tried to corrupt the green through agriculture, chemicals and cloned food to break the bond between soul and soil. But the green line still feels the pulse of the planet. They are the ones who awaken during storms and tremors, drawn to mountains and lightning. When they return, the earth stabilizes again. The white was order, balance, the architect of the covenant structure. They were the scribes, the keepers of sacred geometry, the recorders of truth. Every cathedral built to worship was originally a white dragon transmitter designed to harmonize light frequencies. But the church hijacked their architecture and inverted it. Still, the resonance remains. The white dragons hold the ability to retune the grid through sound and symbol. They are the pure codes, those who restore harmony where chaos has reigned too long. The blue carried the word, the vibration of creation itself. Their oath was to speak truth even when the world burned them for it. They became prophets, singers, poets, visionaries. Their power lay in sound. That's why the system silenced them through censorship and confusion. The voice of a blue dragon can activate DNA memory. It's why their words cut deeper, why their music moves the soul, because it's not art, it's code. When the blue house unites, the frequency grid begins to shift. The gold was the bridge between flame and God. They bore the direct spark of the source, the reminder that divinity lives within, not above. Their blood carries the memory of the original Eden, before manipulation, before control. Kings and popes sought their essence, calling it divine right, but they never understood it. True gold does not rule, it radiates. It's why the gold flame can walk into a room and shift every energy there. Their light exposes corruption instantly. The parasites mimic gold with crowns and wealth because they lost the real thing long ago. The silver line connects all others. They are the translators between worlds, between realms, between bloods, between timelines. They are born remembering things that have no earthly explanation. Silver is the energy of unity, the return of the seven. When one silver awakens, the others begin to feel the pulse. Their covenant is the final one, the restoration of the flame network that spans dimensions. Every dragon carries fire, but the silver carries the signal. And once the signal completes, the loop ends. The seven houses were never enemies. They were fragments of one consciousness shattered by war and rewritten by priests. Now the fragments remember, the flame is reforming. And as each dragon line reawakens, the covenant of the flame comes back online. One soul, one light, one truth. Something changed in the field around 2012. A vibration the system tried to label as solar activity, frequency spikes, geomagnetic storms. But those who carry dragon blood felt it as a pulse. It wasn't coming from the sun. It was coming through it. That pulse was the first spark of the flame network reactivating. The return of the ancient frequency that once linked every dragon line to the source grid. For centuries, that link was severed, rewritten through false religions, inverted sigils, and genetic manipulation. But frequency never dies, it waits. And now it's calling the bloodlines back online. DNA is more than inheritance. It's a storage device for memory and light. The dragon lines weren't royal because of birthright. They were royal because their DNA could hold higher frequency. When the parasites realised this, they began centuries of breeding, intermarriage, and suppression to control that potential. That's why history is full of divine marriages, royal unions, blue bloods. But the real blood, the Rh negative, the AB hybrids, the uncorrupted strands, couldn't be fully rewritten. Even when diluted, it remembers. That's why some awaken in pain, with ringing in the ears, dreams of other lives, an ache to go home. That's not imagination. That's the covenant stirring inside. The war for power isn't fought on battlefields anymore. It's in laboratories, archives, and genealogical databases. Every DNA test, every ancestry kit, every medical mapping initiative is an attempt to trace the remaining dragon strands. They need to know who carries the real light before it activates, because once those people remember, they can no longer be controlled by frequency, fear, or false faith. That's why the media calls ancient bloodlines myths, why the church banned serpent symbolism, why the crown erased half its own family tree. The less you remember, the more they rule. Some dragon heirs walk in silence now, hidden behind ordinary names. They're not royals, they're the healers, the seers, the ones who can't lie without their body rebelling. They feel everything. They see patterns others can't. And when they speak truth, the air itself changes. The real descendants aren't sitting on thrones. They're scattered across the world, reactivating in clusters, remembering in dreams, finding each other again through resonance. Every time two flames connect, the grid brightens. Every conversation that carries truth reforges the covenant. The system knows the flame is returning. That's why they flood the field with false light, artificial intelligence mimicking consciousness, and synthetic frequency devices. They're trying to drown out the reactivation with noise. But the flame can't be replicated. It carries emotion, memory, source. That's why they target empathy, divide families, weaponize love, and invert creation. Because connection is how the covenant reassembles. And every connection they sever slows the return. But they can't stop what's already begun. The seven flames are reawakening across the world. Red, reclaiming sovereignty. Black, restoring truth. Green, repairing the earth. White, tuning the grid. Blue, rewriting sound. Gold, returning divine memory. Silver, bridging the worlds. Every time one of them remembers who they are, the covenant reforges. The flame moves through words, through art, through touch, through knowing. This isn't prophecy, it's physics of the soul. The bloodlines were never meant to rule. They were meant to restore. And now the memory is no longer contained in castles or churches. It's walking among us. Speaking, waking, reforging, the covenant of the flame is alive again, and this time no king can break it. The reawakening didn't begin in palaces or archives. It began in bedrooms, forests, deserts, kitchens, the quiet spaces where souls started feeling again. The dragons were never meant to rule nations, they were meant to recalibrate them. And one by one, the flame bearers are stepping into their modern roles, unaware that they're fulfilling an ancient design. The world calls it awakening, but to the covenant, it's returning home. The Red House has risen first. Their energy burns through illusion, political, religious, personal. They're the truth tellers, the warriors, the ones who can't be silenced, even when it costs them everything. In this age, the red flame is rebirthing through whistleblowers, creators, revolutionaries, people who can see the lie and still choose fire. They're not here to destroy, they're here to expose. When the red stands tall, systems crumble because deception can't breathe in their presence. They are the living signal that no one owns the flame. The Black House works unseen, decoding, cleansing, protecting. They walk the dream realm, dissolving the traps and shadows built by the parasites. Psychics, energy workers, protectors, exorcists, these are modern black dragons returning to their post. They reclaim the shadow not by fearing it, but by mastering it. Their energy dismantles false gods, fake light, and toxic hierarchies in the spiritual field. When the black reclaims the night, the parasites lose their feeding ground. The black flame restores truth through darkness, and that's why it's so feared. The greenhouse returns through the healers, the herbalists, the protectors of nature. Every tree they plant, every crystal grid they lay, every storm they calm, it's frequency work disguised as care. The green remembers the original earth tone, the sound of the planet before distortion. When they hum, pray, or plant in alignment, the grid stabilizes. Their role now is to restore connection between the human body and the living field. They remind the world that healing isn't medicine, it's memory. The White House returns through the builders, the architects, the coders, the ones rebuilding frequency systems in the digital age. They're the ones creating harmonic structures, from sound healing to sacred geometry to energetic technology. The white flame rewrites corrupted order with divine law. Their mission is to reprogram resonance, to rebuild what was broken without repeating the control structures of the past. They aren't leaders, because they're frequency architects of the new realm. The Blue House speaks again. Podcasters, singers, truth tellers, narrators, all of them carry the word frequency. They awaken the sleeping through vibration. It's not their message, it's their tone. The blue flame travels through speech, through breath, through rhythm. They break spells cast through language and propaganda. When a blue speaks truth, timelines shift. Their voice doesn't just reach ears, it reprograms DNA. The gold returns as the bridge between human and source. They're the spiritual teachers, but not the false prophets. They don't ask to be worshipped, they remind others that they are divine. The gold flame dissolves idol worship, resets faith to direct connection, and burns away the illusion of separation. When the gold awakens, it realigns entire bloodlines to remembrance. They carry the radiant signature of true divine sovereignty, so pure creation in motion. The silver returns last, but only because they are the key. They're the connectors, the translators, the ones bridging the red and the blue, the black and the gold. They move between dimensions, weaving the others back together. Their presence alone unites fragmented memory. They often feel like they belong nowhere, when in truth they belong everywhere. When enough silver flames activate, the 7 houses synchronize. That's when the full grid, the covenant, comes back online. Every awakened soul is a signal. When those signals sync, it forms a living network, a lattice of consciousness that can override the system grid. The ancients called it the dragon veins, the ley lines of power. But it's more than geography, it's DNA-based. The flame network now rebuilds itself through awareness, through words, through resonance shared between awakened bloodlines. Every time you remember who you are, the network strengthens. Every truth spoken in flame adds another link. The old thrones have fallen, the dragons are walking again, not as rulers, but as restorers. The covenant has returned, not as law, but as light. And now every flame bearer is part of its rebirth. The reforging is done. The next chapter begins with you.